We need to talk about the elephant in the room. And before I say anything else, I want to preface this by saying I want to walk into this conversation with compassion, humility, and intentionality behind what I'm saying, because it's a very sensitive topic and it can be very divisive. There's a lot of discussion out there that's intentionally divisive, intentionally trying to turn one side against the other, and I'm trying not to do that. I want to walk into this conversation in a way that unifies both sides and says, okay, there's a problem. How do we solve that? How do we discuss the solution behind that? And that's what I hope to do. And I know a lot of people might scream it's a lost cause, and one side might scream, oh, you need to shut up, it's not that way. And the other side is going to say, you need to be more aggressive about this topic. I know there's going to be that. But I want to be very intentional because this is an opinion founded in my moral and religious beliefs as well as political beliefs. And I think it's only right that I speak out. And the issue is transgender violence. There's a big transgender violence in our nation that seems to be on the rise. And I want to be clear, it's not all transgender people. It's far from all transgender people. I understand that there are plenty of well-meaning transgender people out there that either want to be left alone or, maybe like I've got a lot of friends and a couple family members who are transgender, and they might get bent out of shape, they might get frustrated or even shout if you misgender them or you're intentionally ignoring or don't like or don't agree with their perspective of themselves. But they're not violent. They don't call for violence. They don't mock violence. They're not of that variety. I'm talking about a specific subsect of transgender individuals in our nation right now that are either completely okay with political violence, or they advocate for it, or they're even happy about it. A recent study done by YouGov, this organization called YouGov, they started on September 10th, the day of the Charlie Kirk assassination. The study found that those who identified as more liberal were more likely to agree that political violence is okay. Specifically, under the age of 45 years old, if you identified as liberal, you were about 26% likely to say that political violence is sometimes okay. On the conservative side, it's only about 7%, according to the study. That's about 3 times different. It's threefold. To put that into perspective, if you take all of the number of liberals or Democrat-leaning people who voted for Joe Biden in the 2020 election, it's 80 million people. That means if this study extrapolated out continues this trend, you're looking at 20 million people who agree that it is sometimes okay for political violence. That's kind of crazy. That's not okay. There was some other studies, specifically a September 11th poll that asked respondents about whether it was acceptable for a person to be happy about the death of a public figure they oppose. Catch this. Liberals, again, were more likely to say it's usually or always acceptable to be happy about a public figure's death, with 16% holding this position, including 24% of people who identify as very liberal, whereas 10% who said that they were just liberal, not very liberal, saying that it was sometimes or always okay to be happy about the death of a political opponent. Only 4% of conservatives and 7% of moderates. Again, you're looking at 3 to 4 times the number of liberals who are okay with this sort of political violence. This is multiple studies that were done. This is a big issue in our nation right now. What comes to mind is all of these school shootings going on. There's so many shootings. This is becoming a big problem. I think of the Denver shooter. I think of the Nashville shooter, Georgia shooter, the recent Minneapolis shooter. This is a big problem. Massive problem. Charlie Kirk shooter, and now come to find out that Brett Kavanaugh, the person who attempted to break into his house a couple years ago and assassinate him, was also transgender. Like, this is a big problem, that they're either transgender or trans affiliate, that they're close with trans people. They're shooting on behalf of their anger for the transgender community. It's a big, big problem. Now, again, I understand this isn't all transgender people. This is a specific type, this is a specific breed of transgenderism that needs to go away. It needs to stop. There's a transgender or former transgender influencer that goes by the name Neeza. And this transgender individual recently came out as Christian. They detransitioned, and I think they're about 100 days into their Christian faith and detransitioning. They went on a podcast with a gentleman named Ryan Miller. This Ryan Miller guy was interviewing. He asked the question, what are your thoughts? What are your perspectives on the transgender violence issue in our nation as someone who has detransitioned? And the response that Neeza gave was once a transgender woman and is now identifying with his born sex, being a male. And he said, and this is kind of surprising, but it makes sense. I mean, it's not too surprising, but it's interesting to hear it from the horse's mouth. And the idea is that a lot of these people go through some horrible things, whether they are assaulted, they're abused, they were bullied. For one reason or another, they don't know what it's like to properly feel love and compassion of a family. And they end up finding this sense of love and compassion and family value from the transgender community. And a lot of these people, being a family, rise to the extreme of saying, you're so broken, you've gone through so much that I love you and I don't want this to continue for you. And so I'm willing to do whatever it takes to protect you and your emotional well-being. And that means I will even die for you. I will even kill for you. That is the attitude that they have, right? And I want to be very clear about this, that there is a sense of good intention there, but the problem is in the process, you lose your general sense of humanity, that the only thing that matters is the people closest to you. The only thing that matters is your specific breed of thought, your specific ism, your specific political perspective, your specific worldview is the only thing that matters. And anything or anyone that opposes that, you will take down with lethal force. That is the general concept. That's the reason there is trans violence in our nation, at least from a tangible, real-world perspective. I think there's also spiritual things going on, that there's demons and evil spirits dwelling within this transgender community. But it's very clear that from a worldly perspective, that's a practical explanation of what's going on in this community. And I'm trying to be very clear about my thoughts here. That needs to stop. The FBI is currently they're currently in discussion with the Heritage Foundation, along with, who else was it? It was the Oversight Project. The Oversight Project and the Heritage Foundation. Those two organizations are currently filing a petition, trying to get signers on a petition to make transgender people be classified as violent extremists. And the verbiage that they used explicitly was transgender ideology-inspired violent extremism. That's the idea that they're trying to propose to the FBI. I don't know, as of right now, I don't know if there's any hopes or plans to propose a bill for anything like this. I think it's explicitly just a proposal to the FBI to classify a specific type of person as a potential interest. And the ideas that they're trying to discuss is specific verbiage, specific types of thought, specific phrases that might elicit violence or might inherently be justifying violence. And a lot of these are common terms that you might hear from the transgender community. Things like cisgender. They identify this as a person who identifies with his or her biological sex. Dead naming, calling an individual who identifies as transgender or gender nonconforming by the individual's birth name after he or she has adopted a new name. TIVE extremists claim that dead naming is a form of violence. Gillick competence, a term used in medical law to decide whether a child under 16 years of age is able to consent to social transitioning. Puberty blockers, cross-sex hormone, removal of healthy sexual organs, sterilization without the needs of parental permission or knowledge. Another term is Fraser competence. I believe that's how it's pronounced. Misgendering, the intentional or unintentional use of words or names that acknowledge the reality of a transgender person's biological sex. TIVEs view misgendering as an act of actual violence. That's a trend. You're going to notice that. Right to exist. Individuals motivated by the TIVE routinely use the phrase right to exist or erased in online forums and at protests. This life or death terminology is consistent with the TIVE propaganda justifying violence in the name of self-defense. The denied right to exist or erasure is equivalent to killing them or genocide as opposed to merely acknowledging that there are two sexes or disagreeing with transgender ideology. Transgenocide continues on the same exact idea, a term used by TI activists and academia to describe anyone who makes statements to affirm the reality of biological sex as genocidal towards TIVEs. You either have a live boy or a dead girl, or you have a live girl or a dead boy. You choose. A phrase commonly used to try to pressure, shame, or cause emotional distress in persons who do not support TI or affirm the reality of biological sex in people who are gender confused, especially children. So you see all of these, and it's clear that to pretty much everybody on the right, and even some moderates and some people on the very far right left, this is kind of something a lot of us have noticed, that there seems to be a trend of calling these things violence, calling these things attack on their safety, calling these things just radical and over-the-top threats on their life and well-being, almost in a way that allows them to retaliate. If you're being violent towards me by misgendering me, well, then it's just self-defense that I go and try to shoot you. This kind of terminology is very quickly on the rise. And so the study, or not the study, but the proposal from the Oversight Project and the Heritage Foundation is that these terminologies, when used in the way that they're used, should be red flags. I believe is the idea that these should be red flags, things to pay attention to, and that if these things are being used and used frequently, especially used in combination with each other, it can constitute a level of terrorism when it amounts to opportunism for violence. If it's creating opportunity for violence by justifying self-defense, then that can be terroristic. And I tend to agree that if you're saying things like you misgendering me or dead naming me is a genocidal act or it's terroristic act on my community, then it's self-defense for me to go out and shoot you. I mean, even Tyler Robinson in his Discord chats with his partner, his transgender partner, he said his speech is too hateful. His ideas are too hateful. And when you can escalate someone else's thought or idea or rhetoric to being so hateful that you have to kill them, that is terroristic. And I think most of us, if not all of us, that are sane and of sound mind will agree that Tyler Robinson is a terroristic person. That was terrorism. There's no other way you can put it. It was an assassination of a political figure, a internet influencer, however you want to look at Charlie Kirk and perceive him. Terroristic. So the left will say that's just one instance. That's just one-off instance. That's just one person. But you have to notice that there's a general trend here. There's a general uprise of this thing happening in our nation that your rhetoric is fascist, it's suppressive, it's oppressive, it's violent, it's terroristic, it's Nazism, it's all of these things. And because of that, you are literally Hitler. I'm going to go and shoot you. That is a problem that I think George Orwell said it really, really, really well. That the word fascism has no meaning insofar. No, I'm trying to remember the quote. So George Orwell said, "Fascism now has no meaning except insofar as it describes something that is not desirable." If you extrapolate that out to a lot of these terminologies that are being used, when someone says you're racist, you're fascist, you're a bigot, these sorts of things, and a lot of those specific terminologies are used from the left towards the right, but the right does the same thing. The right uses all kinds of other terminology towards the left that I think is uncalled for. But it's just simply describing something that is undesirable, that at the end of the day, you don't even know what you're defining. You don't know what you're saying. You don't know what you're trying to classify them as. You just know, oh, fascism is bad. I believe you're behaving in a bad way, so you're a fascist. Or you're saying something about race that I don't like, and saying bad things about race is racist, so you must be racist. But you have to look at everything through the lens of the actual definition of the word you are using. Words have definition, words have meaning, words have purpose. And so you have to look through that lens of the definition of the word when you are discussing these ideas with people. You can't just go and call it genocide. You can't just go and call this fascism and racist. You can't just go use these types of words as if you've even done any amount of research on what these words mean and the ideas of the people that are using words and ideas that you don't like. You're just throwing and catapulting these words at them as if you've done research on either thing, the meaning of the word or their ideas. And so you have instances where people will say, Charlie Kirk is a fascist. Well, first of all, you can't define what fascism is. I mean, I saw instance after instance after instance after instance of not only myself trying to have conversations with people about fascism, but instances of Charlie Kirk having these conversations about fascism, and they can't even explain themselves what fascism is. And then you have the perspective of not even understanding Charlie Kirk's perspectives, and you just want to throw and catapult these words at him without ever truly knowing the perspectives that he has. The idea that he would even want to sit down and have a conversation with you is completely anti-fascist. If he was fascist, he would say, you don't get the right to speak to me. I wouldn't hand you a mic. I would hand you bullets. That's fascism. The idea that he supports that open dialogue and open discussion of ideas is completely anti-fascist. Even the populist part of fascism, he doesn't promote or purport or support the idea that it's all of you guys down here versus all the elites, and we got to pin the two sides versus each other. He actually taught and he educated and informed and encouraged that if you are down here, you have the ability to be up here. That through hard work and discipline and a meritocracy, you can go from being down here to being up here. That's the idea. It's just so anti-fascist, right? So the left catapults definitions of words that they don't even know. They don't even know what they're saying at somebody because they don't like the ideas that the other person is saying, or at least the misconstrued idea of what that person is saying. And then it becomes, well, because you're fascist, now I can be violent against you because fascism is evil and it's a sin against humanity. Well, I agree fascism is, but Charlie Kirk is so far from fascism, it's insane. Fascism is saying, I'm going to put a bullet in you because I don't like you. Fascism is saying, we're going to cancel you based on something you said years ago, or we're going to socially pressure you into not being able to talk. Fascism is Destiny, the podcaster, going on his platform and saying, we need more people, more conservative people, to be scared of being killed. Verbatim, that's what he said. We need more conservatives scared of being killed. That's fascism, right? Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that the left is all fascist, but there are fascist ideas that are being spread through the left and specifically through transgender movements. And again, this isn't all transgender people. This isn't all left-leaning people. This is a specific breed of people that have been sort of brainwashed. They've been just totally messed up in their education and academia to believe that other people having ideas that you don't like means they hate you and want you dead. And that means because they want you dead and it's a literal desire for you to die, then I have to respond. I have to act in response to that. I got to defend myself or even proactively take down the people who want to kill me. It's some sort of justice in that community that I'm going to protect myself and the people around me from the opposite side who literally wants me dead. And that's just not happening. There might be a small subsect of far-right extremism that's like, okay, we literally want trans people dead and just wiped from the face of the earth. But even Michael Knowles, who is on the right, he says we need to eradicate transgenderism. He didn't say we need to eradicate transgenders. He said transgenderism. But you take that idea, like Michael Knowles says, I want to eradicate your ideas. And they take that as you want to literally eradicate my life. And that's asinine. It's insane. That if you are finding your identity in simply the politics or the world, like somebody could strip away my Christianity and my ability to be Christian openly, but I'm still here. I'm still Noah. I still have my personality. I've got my interests. I've got my temperaments. I've got my tendencies, my mannerisms. Like some of the most fundamental parts of my identity are still there. Even if you take away my Christianity or my right to free speech or various things that I stand for, I'm still Noah. I'm still here. I'm still breathing and living. They're not attacking my literal life. So why would I go out and take them down and shoot them and kill them? That's asinine. That's unhealthy. And so I actually agree that the FBI should pass this. It's not really passed because it's not litigation. It's not an actual bill or law that's being passed. But they should start actually actively considering transgender people in their investigation and in their surveillance and in their intelligence, because there is a problem that if people are using this type of verbiage, this type of phraseology, they need to be watched. I'm not saying that they need to be imprisoned or taken down or anything of that sort, but they need to be watched. And if I, as a conservative, say, this person over here sounds like they might actually be trying to come after me, then that should be taken seriously. If they're using these trans verbiage, and phraseology to allude to the idea of violence towards me and other conservatives, like they are on TikTok saying Charlie Kirk deserved to die, or they've got checklists and like, oh, when's the next hitman going to get Trump, or when is Elon Musk's turn? Those types of people need to be investigated, like deeply. I don't care if it's just a joke. That's an insane joke to make. We're living in like the most insane society I could imagine right now for America, like compared to what America once was and what it could be. It's asinine. This is crazy. This has to stop. We really have to change the narrative and change it quick.